I never thought I'd be the kind of person who brings legal documents to Christmas dinner, but when you watch your child get shoved to the floor by her own grandfather, you realize some lines can't be uncrossed. My name is Lee, and I'm a single mother. Over the years, I've become an expert at two things: pretending everything's fine and carrying far too much at once. For most of my life, I believed that if I just stayed quiet enough, smiled enough, and took up less space, my family would finally accept me. Christmas Eve at my parents' home was my annual lesson that no matter how small I made myself, I'd never be small enough for the people who decided I didn't belong. The dining room looked like a holiday magazine had collided with a craft store. Garland draped over every surface, candles flickering with that artificial pine scent that's supposed to smell like winter, but really just smells like expensive wax and broken promises. My sister Chelsea had insisted we all wear matching sweaters. Hers looked adorable, naturally. Mine looked like I'd been dressed by someone who lost a bet. My daughter Maya kept pulling at her sleeves because she was 9, and the sweater was sized for what Chelsea called a delicate little angel. Translation, not my kid. At the head of the table sat my father, commanding attention the way he always did, fork raised like royalty. His laughter boomed through the room, loud and self-satisfied. Chelsea's daughter Lily, only 5 years old with blonde ringlets and enormous eyes, sat in the chair closest to him. Everyone treated that seat like it was sacred ground, the spot that always got the best portions and the first refills, the chair that somehow belonged to the real family more than the rest of us ever could. Lily has mastered the art of getting whatever she wants with a single sigh. Everyone calls her grandpa's little princess, like it's a title you earn through bloodline alone. Maya watched all of this with the careful expression of a child who's learned to read danger before she learned to read books. It makes you proud and breaks your heart in the exact same moment. My father's mood had been what I'd call festive, which is the kindest way to describe it. He'd made one of his signature comments when I walked through the door. "Well, look who decided to show up," he said, as if I'd crashed a party I wasn't invited to. I smiled anyway, because that's what you do when you've been trained your entire life. Smile, make it easy. Don't give him ammunition. Then during dinner, he started with his jokes. Blood's thicker than holiday punch, he announced, raising his glass toward Chelsea like they were sharing some private inside joke. Chelsea laughed too enthusiastically. My mother laughed too quietly. Aunt Linda laughed like someone was paying her per chuckle. Maya didn't laugh at all. She just kept her hands folded neatly in her lap, like she'd already learned that laughter can be weaponized against you. I watched it all, swallowed my feelings, and kept my eyes on my daughter. And then, because my family loves their traditions, we reached the part where everyone pretends dysfunction is normal. Maya stood up, holding her little paper place card that Chelsea had decorated with glitter and ribbons. She walked toward the table with this small, hopeful smile on her face. She wasn't trying to steal anyone's spotlight. She just wanted to sit down. She wanted to be included, the way children do before the world teaches them that belonging is something you have to earn. She approached the special seat, not because she was trying to claim it, but because Chelsea had placed her card there, which is almost darkly funny, isn't it? Like the universe has a twisted sense of timing. My father saw the card, saw Maya's hand reaching for the chair, and something in his expression snapped. "That seat is for my real grandchild." He barked. Maya froze instantly. The smile vanished from her face so fast it was like someone had flipped a switch. "Move," he added, as if my 9-year-old had committed some terrible crime, and then he shoved her, not a gentle nudge, not a redirect, a full shove, a grown man's hand on a small child's shoulder, pushing her backward like she was an obstacle to be removed. Maya stumbled. Her foot caught on the edge of the rug. Her knee slammed into the hardwood floor with a sound that made my stomach turn inside out. And then came the silence. Forks froze midair. Someone's napkin fell to the floor. Aunt Linda made a tiny gasping sound, like Maya had merely spilled something instead of being physically assaulted. Chelsea didn't move. She just stared, like she was watching a scene from a television show she hadn't asked to see, but might still find entertaining. My mother's face went completely blank, practiced and perfected, like she'd been rehearsing for this exact moment her entire life. My daughter looked up at me, not crying yet, just confused, like her brain couldn't process what had just happened. I was already moving before I even realized my body was in motion. I helped her to her feet. Her body was rigid, trembling with shock. Her knee was already turning an angry shade of red. Her breathing came in tiny, shallow bursts. Her fingers grabbed onto my sleeve like she needed something solid to hold on to. I looked around the table. More than 20 people, adults, family, witnesses. Not a single person stood up. Not one person said, "What is wrong with you?" Not one person reached out to comfort my daughter. Not even my own mother. My ears started ringing. My vision narrowed to a tunnel. And then, in the middle of that ringing silence, a thought landed in my mind with perfect, icy clarity. This ends now. I leaned down close to Maya and whispered, "I've got you," because I needed her to hear at least one adult in that room say something true. Then I reached down with my free hand and pulled out my bag. I didn't make a speech. I didn't ask for permission or approval. I didn't wait for someone to suddenly develop a spine. I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table directly in front of my parents, right between the cranberry sauce and the decades of lies they'd been feeding me. I looked at my father, then at my mother, and I said 4 words. "You've been served." For a moment, nobody moved, not even my father. Then his hand reached for the folder like it belonged to him, the same way everything else in that house always had. He opened it slowly. His eyes scanned the first page. My mother was still holding her wine glass, frozen halfway between the table and her lips, like time itself might pause if she just didn't blink. Then my father's face drained of all color, and my mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, hitting the table with a sharp, ugly sound before tipping over and spilling everywhere. My father wasn't angry pale, not indignant pale. This was recognition pale, fear pale. Then I walked out with my daughter, and behind me, for the first time all evening, the silence finally broke, not with comfort or concern, with panic. To understand why I had that folder in my bag, you need to understand what my life has looked like inside that house. Because people love to ask questions like, "Why didn't you just cut them off years ago?" As if family is a light switch you can simply flip off and walk away from without hearing their voices echo in your head for the next decade. Growing up, my sister Chelsea was sunshine. I was weather. Chelsea got praised, I got corrected. Chelsea heard "You're such a star." I heard "Don't be so dramatic." Chelsea got "Come sit by me." I got "Move, you're blocking the view." My father's favorite trick was saying cruel things disguised as jokes. Like if he smiled while he said them, they somehow didn't count as abuse. "Where'd you get that hair?" He'd say when I was a teenager, "Must have been the mailman." Everyone would laugh, the kind of nervous laughter people produce when they're terrified of becoming the next target. My mother would give me that look that meant, "Don't start anything. Don't make this worse. Don't ruin dinner." Chelsea became my father's proof that his marriage was solid, proof he wasn't being betrayed, proof he was the kind of man who could produce a legitimate daughter. I became the question mark, the uncertainty he couldn't shake. My father never got a paternity test. That would have required admitting he might be wrong. Much easier to punish me for his suspicions and call it righteous judgment. And my mother let him. That's the part people don't understand until they've lived it. A father can be cruel because cruelty is his nature. But a mother has to make the choice over and over again to watch it happen and do nothing. My grandfather, my father's father, was the only person on that side who ever made me feel like I belonged. He wasn't warm exactly. He was one of those old school men who believed emotions were for people who didn't have real work to do. But he'd pat my shoulder and say, "You're smart. Don't let anyone dull that edge." He'd slip me birthday cards with crisp bills inside and tell Chelsea loudly to stop spending money like it was a competitive sport. When he died, the house shifted, not with grief but with ownership. My father took control of everything: papers, accounts, decisions. I was told very casually that there wasn't anything set aside for me. That's the exact phrase my mother used, like she was discussing leftovers nobody wanted. "There wasn't anything set aside," she said, eyes on the kitchen counter, voice completely flat, like she was reading from a script someone else had written. I believed her, or I tried to, because the alternative was admitting that my parents could look directly at me and decide I wasn't worth honesty. And then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I babysat Lily, the golden grandchild, the one who gets the special seat, the first cookie, the fancy plate. Chelsea had texted me asking if I could watch her for an hour because she had a work call. A work call. Sure. Chelsea works from home the same way I do yoga when I'm stretching for the TV remote. I said yes, because Lily is 5 and she likes me in the way kids like adults who don't make them audition for affection. Also because I'm still infected with that old family disease. Maybe if I'm useful enough, they'll finally treat me better. Chelsea left. The house fell quiet. Lily played with her dolls. I cleaned up wrapping paper because apparently my role in that family is helper, not human being. Chelsea's laptop sat closed on the coffee table, asleep and innocent. Not my business, but Lily saw it like a shiny forbidden toy and flipped it open like she'd done it 100 times before. The screen glowed to life. A password box appeared and Lily, with her tiny fingers and serious face, typed in the password like it was her own name, like it was a game she'd played before. I froze because children don't know passwords unless someone's been letting them use the device. I walked over and said gently, "Hey, sweetie, that's not a toy." I reached to close it, and that's when the laptop fully woke up. A PDF document popped onto the screen like the computer had been holding its breath, waiting. And right there at the top in bold letters was my grandfather's name. I stopped breathing. I sat down, not because I was being nosy, but because my body understood something before my brain did. This matters. I skimmed quickly but carefully, the way you read when you're afraid of what you'll find but more afraid of what you already suspect. There were headings, official, looking ones, trust documents, beneficiary information. My throat tightened, and then I saw it, my full legal name, not a nickname, not Lee, maybe, not other child, my actual name, printed clearly and undeniably. I scrolled again, moving carefully, like if I went too fast the truth might disappear. A page titled Distribution Summary was partially visible. One line jumped out at me because it had a date I remembered in my bones. The month I'd asked my parents for help with a security deposit on a safer apartment after a break-in. The month my father had laughed and said, "You should have made better life choices." The month my mother had shrugged and said, "We just can't help right now." That exact same month, Chelsea had suddenly announced she was so blessed and bought a brand new SUV. I stared at that line until the numbers blurred together. Then I did the only smart thing I've ever learned to do in that family. I took a photo, just one, clear and focused, the trust name, my name, the parts that mattered. I closed the laptop. Lily asked if she could watch cartoons. I smiled at her like my entire world hadn't just tilted on its axis. "Yes, honey," I said. "Pick whatever you want." That night, after Chelsea came home and chirped, "Everything go okay?" I said yes because I needed time, and because confronting people like my parents without a solid plan is like walking into a hurricane armed with nothing but an umbrella. 2 days later, I sat across from a woman named Rebecca Shaw in a small law office that smelled like coffee and quiet competence. I slid my phone across the desk toward her. Rebecca studied the photo for all of 5 seconds before her expression shifted. Not shock, not confusion, recognition, the kind of look you give when you've seen this exact pattern play out before. "If your name is on it," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Trustees don't get to decide you don't count." I swallowed hard. Even if they think whatever they think," Rebecca interrupted. "Ink beats opinions. I didn't call my parents afterward. I didn't confront Chelsea. I didn't try to clear the air or explain myself. I let Rebecca do what she does best, work quietly and methodically. And when Rebecca handed me a folder several days later, I didn't open it in the parking lot like some movie character having a dramatic moment. I sat in my car and stared at it like it was a bomb, because it was, not the explosive kind, the life-changing kind. For days that folder lived in my bag. I'd take it out, then put it back, take it out again. Put it back again. I told myself I'd deal with it after the holidays. Not at Christmas. Not in front of everyone. Don't be dramatic. Don't ruin things. I told myself I could survive one more dinner. I told myself I could keep the peace just a little longer. And then my father put his hands on my child, and waiting stopped being an option. Maya was quiet in the car afterward. Not the normal quiet where she's plotting how to convince me that dessert counts as a legitimate food group. This was the kind of quiet that terrifies you as a parent, because you can hear your child's brain trying desperately to build meaning around something that should never have happened in the first place. Her knee was starting to swell. She sniffed hard like she was trying not to cry, like crying would somehow make her a burden. I hated them for that, for teaching her that response. I kept my voice as gentle as I could manage. "Hey, look at me. You didn't do anything wrong." She stared out the window. "He doesn't like me." My throat tightened painfully. "That's about him, baby, not you." Maya's voice got even smaller. "Is it because I'm not real?" There it was. The poison passed down like a toxic heirloom. I pulled the car over for a second because I needed my hands to be steady for this. "No," I said, and I made that word into a wall. "You are real. You belong with me, always." She nodded like she wanted to believe me, like belief was something she had to earn through good behavior. I drove the rest of the way home with my jaw clenched so tightly my teeth ached. Now, because I know some of you are wondering what was actually in that folder, here it is. The answer, the thing I didn't bother explaining at the table because my family doesn't deserve speeches. That folder wasn't a threat or a bluff. It was legal service, a court petition demanding a full accounting of my grandfather's trust. Every dollar in, every dollar out, every signature, every transfer, laid bare. It requested the court freeze all further distributions until the truth was documented on paper where nobody could conveniently forget it. It asked to remove my parents as the people controlling the trust because what I'd discovered wasn't confusion or miscommunication. It was deliberate diversion. The folder included exhibits, my name clearly listed on the trust documents, distribution records that suspiciously matched the sudden financial miracles in Chelsea's life, and contact information for the trust administrator so nobody could claim I was making things up. And that cover page, that's why my father went pale, because he recognized it instantly, because he knew exactly what he'd been doing all these years, because he knew I wasn't guessing anymore. I was done playing games. My phone started ringing before I even pulled into my driveway. Chelsea first, then my mother, then my father. Over and over. Chelsea left a voicemail that was half rage, half panic. "What did you do? Are you insane? You're destroying everything." My mother's voicemail was a sobbing whisper. "Lee, please, please don't do this. Think about," as if I hadn't been thinking about my child's knee slamming into hardwood. My father's voicemail was ice cold. No yelling, no theatrics, just this. You're not taking anything from this family. I didn't call any of them back. I got Maya settled on the couch in her comfy leggings and an old hoodie, pressed an ice pack gently to her knee, and made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, because sometimes parenting is just knowing when to add sweetness to pain. We watched a Christmas movie together on the couch, Maya tucked against my side like she was afraid the world might shove her again if she moved too far away. My phone kept buzzing relentlessly. The family group chat was exploding. Aunt Linda, how could you do this on Christmas? A cousin I barely spoke to. I heard what happened. Are you okay? Chelsea posting pictures of Lily sitting in the special seat with a caption like it was adorable, like it was perfectly normal. And then the character assassination began. Chelsea posted on Facebook, "Some people will destroy an entire family over money." No names mentioned, just enough for everyone to point fingers in my direction. People reacted with little heart emojis like betrayal was somehow inspirational content. My aunt messaged me, "You've always been so dramatic, Lee." My uncle wrote, "Call your father and apologize immediately." Nobody wrote, "Is Maya okay?" That told me everything I needed to know about the family I'd been desperately trying to hold on to. Then my father sent one text that was clearly meant to scare me into silence. A message he'd been saving in his back pocket my entire life, waiting for the perfect moment where it would hurt the most. "You want court? Fine. Let's tell the judge why you should be getting my father's inheritance if you're not even mine." My stomach dropped, not because I believed him, but because I understood exactly what he was trying to do. He wasn't defending money. He was defending his right to punish me, and he was going to try to drag my daughter into it too. I stared at that text until my hands stopped shaking. Then I looked down at Maya, asleep on the couch, and I whispered to her and to myself, "He doesn't get to write our story anymore." 2 days after Christmas, Rebecca forwarded me a PDF with the ominous title, "Response plus Motion." Nothing quite like opening your inbox and finding a document that sounds like a science fiction sequel. I was standing in my kitchen wearing yesterday's sweatshirt, watching Maya eat cereal like nothing in the world had happened, because that's what children do when they're trying to be brave for you. She was 9 years old. She wasn't crying anymore. She was doing that quiet thing children do when they decide emotions are too dangerous because the adults around them act like feelings are threats. My phone buzzed again. Rebecca texted, "Open it. Call me when you get to page 2. Page 2 was where they went straight for my throat. Not just the real grandchildren and nonsense, though yes, that was prominently featured, bolded like a billboard slogan. They were asking the court to dismiss my petition entirely and sanction me for bad faith and harassment. Sanction like I was a misbehaving pet. I could practically hear my father's voice narrating, "See, even the judge thinks you're being dramatic." My stomach dropped so hard I had to lean against the counter for support. Rebecca called before I could spiral completely. "Listen," she said, her voice calm in that way people are calm when they've already seen this movie and know how it ends. "They're going to try to make this about whether you're real family. Don't take the bait." My throat felt tight. "They're really doing this. They're desperate," she said simply. "Desperate people throw sand in every direction." I swallowed. If he's saying I'm not his, should we just do a test and settle it? There was a pause, just long enough for my shame to try crawling up my neck. Then Rebecca said firmly, "Not for court, not for them. Your name is on the trust. Trustees don't get to rewrite legal documents based on their personal suspicions." I stared at Maya, who was carefully lining up her spoon and bowl like she could make the entire morning behave if she just made the objects behave first. "I don't know if I even want to know the truth," I said quietly. Rebecca had me come into her office that same afternoon. She slid a printout toward me across the desk. "Initial snapshot from the trust administrator." She said calmly. I read the top line and my ears went hot. Trust principal at grandfather's death, $480,000. The next line made me blink several times. Intended split, 50% Lee, 50% Chelsea. I sat back hard in my chair, the air leaving my lungs. My share, I said, my voice cracking. I cleared my throat and tried again. So $240,000. Rebecca nodded once, then tapped the bottom line with her pen. Current trust balance, $38,000. My brain refused to process it for a full second, like it was waiting for someone to laugh and say this was all a prank. That can't be right. I whispered. Rebecca didn't flinch. It's right. Now we show the court exactly how it happened. She slid another page titled Distributions, Trustee Approved, across the desk toward me. It wasn't the complete file yet, just the highlights, enough to make me physically ill, not enough to prove it on paper. Not yet, and then I saw where my life had gone, not in some poetic, metaphorical way, in cold, itemized detail. We didn't go through every single transaction because nobody needs a 90-minute documentary about my parents' financial creativity. Rebecca highlighted the major ones, the kind that tell a complete story even if you don't understand complex finance. Chelsea's down payment on her house, a vehicle purchase, medical expenses, education costs. The categories were almost insulting, like if you label theft as family support, it magically becomes wholesome. They told me they couldn't help me, I said, and I heard my own voice the way you hear yourself on a recording. Too calm, too controlled. Like if I let the emotion out, it would completely drown me. Rebecca didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't perform sympathy. She handed me reality like a weapon I could actually use. They took money specifically earmarked for you, she said evenly, and spent it like a family slush fund. I looked down at my highlighted name on the trust paperwork, my name printed in clean black ink, like it had always been real, like it had always been there, undeniable. And that's when my phone buzzed with yet another text from Aunt Linda. Why are you doing this to your father? I stared at it and actually laughed out loud. One sharp, bitter sound, because sure, Linda, I'm the one doing this, not the people who moved hundreds of thousands of dollars around like it was loose pocket change. That week, Meyer asked me something while I was brushing her hair before bed. Do I have to say sorry? The question landed like a physical punch. Sorry for what, sweetheart? She stared at her own reflection in the mirror like she didn't want to see herself too clearly. For making everyone mad? I set the brush down carefully. No, I said, making my voice firm enough to become solid ground beneath her feet. You don't apologize for someone else hurting you. Ever? Her shoulders visibly eased, like she'd been carrying that thought around in her backpack all week. That night, I made a decision I should have made years ago. No more visits, no phone calls, no surprise drop-bys, boundaries so solid you could trip over them. They stole my money and my childhood. They don't get access to my daughter, too. The first hearing happened quickly. Emergency preservation order. Freeze everything. The kind of court appearance where you don't wear your cute outfit. You wear something that says, I am here to be taken seriously, and also I know how to operate an iron. Janine Keller, my parents' attorney, walked in like she owned the entire building. Ms. Keller was polished and bright-eyed, smiling with perfect teeth, but absolutely no soul behind it. She argued real grandchildren. She argued family intent. She argued mutual understanding. Rebecca asked for exactly two things: preserve all records and freeze any movement of funds. The judge granted both requests and set a deadline for the complete file to be submitted. Every statement, every transfer record, every trustee approval that authorized them. My father's jaw visibly tightened. Chelsea's eyes flicked nervously toward him. My mother stared down at the table like it might swallow her whole. On the walk out of the courtroom, my father finally looked directly at me, like he was trying to decide if I was his daughter or his enemy? And I thought dryly, bold time to start considering the nature of our relationship. Dad. Maya was quiet when I got home that evening. Not I'm fine, quiet, the other kind. The kind where a child is trying to figure out what the world just taught her about trust and safety. While I made dinner, she said very softly, "Are we in trouble?" I swallowed the rage down like a stone lodged in my throat. "No, baby, we're safe." Between hearings, the real evidence started arriving. Not all at once. Paperwork arrives the same way consequences do, steadily and without mercy. A week later, Rebecca sent me a message that just said, "Come in right now." I sat across from her again, and she slid one single page onto the desk like it was a loaded weapon. "Look at the approvals column," she said quietly. I scanned down the page, signatures, initials, authorizations, and then my eyes landed on it and refused to move. My mother's signature, not once, multiple times, spanning years. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I didn't hear the next sentence. Rebecca said. I just stared at the ink, at the familiar curve of my mother's handwriting, at how casually she'd signed off on it all, like it was routine paperwork, like it meant nothing. I thought it was just my father. I whispered, but she knew the entire time. I didn't cry in that moment. I felt steady in a way I'd never felt before. The next hearing felt like walking into a room where everyone already knows the terrible secret, and you're the last one still pretending it isn't sitting right there in the middle of the floor. MS. Keller tried one final time to pivot everything to biology and bloodlines. Rebecca didn't even blink. She kept her argument devastatingly simple. My client's name is on the trust. Trustees have legal duties. Signatures prove clear intent, and family rumors are not a legal defense in any court. The judge didn't give a dramatic speech. He gave a decision. I won. My share was $240,000. The court ordered my parents to pay it back in full, plus accumulated interest, plus all of my legal costs, plus penalties for breach of fiduciary duty. $368,000 total. My father looked genuinely stunned. Chelsea went completely rigid. My mother didn't move at all, like someone had pressed pause on her existence. I didn't feel victorious in that moment. I felt lighter, not happy. Just lighter, like my body had finally let go of something it had been clenching around for decades. Winning in court doesn't feel like fireworks and celebration. It feels like your body finally releases something it's been holding so tightly that you forgot what it felt like to breathe normally. And then you realize you don't even know how to stand without that weight anymore. When I got home that evening, Maya was at the kitchen table doing homework, her tongue sticking out in concentration like we were just a normal Tuesday family. Like a judge hadn't just put an actual price tag on my parents' decades of betrayal. I tried to make dinner. I tried to act like I wasn't physically shaking. I tried to be the version of myself who believes closure is actually a real thing that exists. Then I went into my room and saw the box sitting there. Small, plain, ugly, the paternity kit. MS. Keller's little gotcha moment. Mailed to me weeks earlier like a dare wrapped in cardboard and spite. Rebecca had told me clearly and firmly, don't touch it, not for court, not for them. Don't let them drag you into the mud and call it truth seeking. And I hadn't touched it. I'd let paper beat rumor. I'd let ink beat cruelty and suspicion. But now the court case was decided, and the question was still sitting there like a live wire humming with electricity. I stared at it long enough to hear my father's voice echoing in my head. Real grandkid, real family, real. And then I thought of Maya's knee hitting that hardwood floor. I grabbed the box, not because I owed anyone proof, because I was exhausted from carrying doubt around like it was my birthright, my inheritance of shame. Inside, everything was neatly arranged in sterile packaging. Of course it was. My father doesn't just want to be right about things. He wants the presentation to match his righteousness. His sample was already included in the kit. That detail almost made me laugh, not funny laugh. The other kind, the kind you produce when someone's audacity is so committed, it becomes performance art. I didn't read the instructions carefully. I didn't light a candle or make it a meaningful moment. I swabbed my cheek, sealed everything up, and shoved it back into the mail like I was returning a defective product that never should have been sent in the first place. Then came the waiting period. You'd think waiting would feel calm after the court battle ended. It wasn't. Every single day, I checked for updates like a compulsive habit I couldn't break. Every day, I told myself it didn't actually matter what the results said. Every day, it mattered anyway. Maya kept processing everything in her own quiet way. The first few nights after court, she hovered near me constantly, like she was bracing for another shove from the universe. Then one evening, as I was tucking her into bed, she said very casually, "I don't want to go back there again." No tremble in her voice, no question mark, a decision, and something in my chest cracked wide open. Pride and grief and relief, all stacked together in one impossible feeling. The email arrived on a Tuesday, because life apparently loves dropping grenades into perfectly ordinary days. I opened it alone at my kitchen counter and read it once, twice, 3 times, like the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder if I just kept looking. Biological match confirmed. I'm his daughter. My first feeling wasn't relief. It was fury so clean and cold it felt like clarity, because it meant the suspicion had been wrong all along, and the cruelty had still been completely deliberate. It meant they could have ended this decades ago with one simple test and 1 ounce of basic decency. They didn't want clarity, they wanted permission, a license to treat me like I was less than. So I sent the results to both of them. No long message, no explanation, no invitation to respond or reconcile. Just, "You built my entire life around a lie. Here's the truth." Then I blocked both of their numbers, and I genuinely thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing there alone, hands clasped together like she was about to ask for forgiveness the way you ask for a small favor. Maya was at school, thank God. I opened the door just wide enough to make it absolutely clear I was listening, not welcoming her inside. My mother's eyes were swollen and red, not in a dramatic way, in a tired way, like she'd been crying at her own reflection and losing the argument. She didn't start with "I'm sorry." She started with strategy. "Your father," she said, voice trembling, "he's been different lately. He's been asking about Maya." I said absolutely nothing. "He wants to see her." She rushed on. "He wants to be a family now that we know the truth. Now that we know. Like love is a subscription service that activates when the lab confirms you qualify for it." Then she finally cracked, and the truth came spilling out in the only way truth ever comes out after years of silence, messy and far too late, before you were born. She said, her voice shaking badly, "I slept with someone else, just once. Your father found out, or he suspected. Honestly, I don't even remember anymore which came first. But from that moment forward, he decided you might not be his, and I let him treat you like a question mark for your entire childhood because I felt guilty. I thought I deserved his anger, and somehow you ended up paying the price for my mistake instead." She took a breath. "I thought I was doing what I had to do to keep the family together, and now we can finally fix everything. We can start over." I waited until she finished her prepared speech. Then I said quietly, "No." Her face tightened like she didn't understand the language I was speaking, so I made it absolutely plain. It shouldn't have mattered. I told her, "You were supposed to be my mother, whether I was his biological child or not, and you chose him anyway. You chose his comfort over my safety every single time." She tried to speak. I didn't let her. "My father doesn't get access to Maya now just because a test says she's real family." I said, "And you don't get to come back just because the story is finally comfortable for you again." I told her the only thing she was leaving with was the knowledge that she'd been wrong about everything that mattered. Then I closed the door in her face. That night, Meyer asked me, her voice steady and small at the same time, "We're not going back there, right?" I sat down beside her on the couch, close enough that she didn't have to be brave all alone. "No," I said firmly, "we're not going back." And this time, it wasn't just a